My name is Zena Gooding-Broderick. I'm a funeral director and I work for Hugh Gooding Funeral Services. My dad started the business a few years ago in 2007, but his inspiration came many years before. My father's father passed away and my dad was really upset with the service he'd received. He really wasn't happy with the way my grandfather looked, and I remember thinking that my granddad looked like Frankenstein. Luckily, we weren't completely traumatised, but my dad was not pleased. And my dad kept saying I could have done a better job myself, and I think it did spark something off. Then my grandmother died in the late 90s, and again, my dad was saying, oh, I could have done a better job myself. And then he started to really seriously look into becoming a funeral director. That was the motivation. It was really how his father and his mother were treated in his view when they died and the service that he received, and he felt that he deserved better and we deserved better as a family. A few years ago now, in 2012, my father had been complaining that he was quite tired. He started to display signs of jaundice. The whites of his eyes went yellow, and someone said to him, oh, you've got to go and get that seen to. He went to the doctor said, we'll give you the results in 2 weeks. And a friend said, did you go to the doctors then? And he said, yes, I've got to go back in 2 weeks. He says, no, you've got to go to the hospital. Well, they went to the hospital and they wouldn't let him leave. They said they thought that there was something seriously wrong with him. And I was with him in the family room with the consultant, and the consultant said to my father, I'm sorry, Mr. Gooding, it is cancer, it is inoperable, and it's incurable. And I said to the consultant, so what are you going to do to take care of my dad then? And then he started to talk about palliative care. And that's when I thought, hold on a minute, you're jumping the gun a bit. And my father squeezed my hand and said, what he's trying to say, Pet, is I'm terminally ill. And that's when I felt like someone had taken a running kick at my stomach. And then my dad said to me, please look after my business, don't let my business die. So that was my way into the business, and it wasn't an easy decision to make because it's a serious thing to continue with somebody's dying wish, and that was the weight of the decision that I had to make. The first funeral I directed was my father's. He used to say to me when I worked there from time to time before he got ill, he'd say, do you want to work here full time? Do you like it working here? Do you think you could be a funeral director? And I'd say, I'd be absolutely useless, Daddy. They'd be crying, I'd be crying, we'd all be there in tears. It'd be a complete catastrophe. And he said to me, no, you wouldn't, Pet. You wouldn't cry. You'd put the family first. I think that situation really put the bar very, very high for me. I wasn't an experienced funeral director and I had to get it 100% right for my dad. So going forward in the business, I felt that everybody else's funeral that I directed would really need to be better because they deserve no less just because it wasn't my dad's. I didn't want them to feel as though there was nothing personal in it for me. Every funeral that I do is very personal because I'm carrying my dad's baton. We all really want to do our best for Daddy and his memory and for the people who come to us.
My name is Graham, and I have my wife Pam's ashes tattooed on my right calf. We were on a Facebook page. We were both Christians and we had a prayer page. I met her on that and she She friended me on Facebook. Funny story is that the first actual interaction we had was an argument. She used to post something on her page called Facebook for Christ, and I read it and just basically said that it was a load of rubbish, and we had interaction with that for a while. And then on rereading it, I realised that I was wrong. So I said to her, I said, listen, I said, I've reread it, and whilst there's still some areas that I don't agree with, a lot of it is right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. And she sent me a private message and said that's the first time in 32 years that a man has ever A, admitted he was wrong, and B, apologised to me. So from there we started chatting a lot more. She was from America, and basically I told her to come over. She came over in June of 2010, and we got married in December of 2010. She went into hospital before Christmas. They found a blockage in a bowel, and they had to take a part of a bowel out and put a colostomy bag on. She was getting better, but unfortunately when she came home, she started being poorly again. Pam passed away on the 25th of January this year. She died of a massive blood clot which went to her heart, causing her to have a massive heart attack. I was always going to have a tattoo done, so I had Pam's favourite flower, date of birth and date of death, with Pam's ashes being tattooed into it. Pam will never ever be away from me. She is part of me. As I say, we're both Christians, and there's a scripture that says that when two people join together, they join together forever. And I just took that little bit step further and actually had her become one flesh, with her ashes being tattooed onto my body.
Back in 1984, we'd been together 2 years. My sister and her husband, they were talking about a venture in the northern part of Greece, and asked us if we were interested in taking part. Both of us at that time were working for American Express, weren't we? And
hated that job.
yeah, we thought anything better than that. We lived in a village where we were the only two foreigners. To survive, we picked olives in the winter, and we made thousands of tons of concrete by hand, working on Greek building sites, which is an adventure I would not recommend to anybody. But we had a really good time, and we made some really good friends, Greek friends, doing that. And so Greece was a fantastic episode. Came back to England to carve out a new life for us. I ended up just before Christmas 2011. Hospitalised with pleurisy, pneumonia, and DVT, deep vein thrombosis. And then they announced they'd done some tests, and they said you're type 2 diabetic and you've got serious liver damage. They basically said you've got about 6 months left to live. Meanwhile, John here, 2013, you got diagnosed with what?
Oh, cancer, sorry, yeah. Yeah, I had a tumour in my mouth. Had surgery, removed it, and they decided that they would give me 25 doses of x-rays which worked, touch wood, and chemotherapy, which I'm still on, and basically that's where we are now.
You're literally being kept alive by chemotherapy, which makes you feel like death warmed over, doesn't it?
I've said several times I think the cure's worse than the disease. But there we are.
Neither of us want to die in a hospital or a hospice. Both of us want to die in our own bed at home. And it's a promise we've made to each other that is what will happen.
My name is Bob Bury. I'm a retired NHS doctor, and when I retired 6-7 years ago, I trained to become a humanist celebrant, which is someone who takes non-religious funerals, which sounds like an odd thing to do in retirement. And humanism is a worldview which says that we can explain everything that goes on in the universe and around us without needing to postulate the existence of a supreme being of any description, so we're atheists. But I think more importantly, we believe we only have the one life to live, and therefore we need to live it to the best of our ability, which we think means putting other people at the centre of your ethical decision-making. So the golden rule, really, treating others as you want to be treated yourself. Nothing new about that at all. I, like most other humanists I speak to, didn't become a humanist. I just one day discovered that I was one. I was a regular Church of England church-goer up into my early 40s when I read a magazine article about Iris Murdoch, and what she was saying made sense, and I realised that actually a lot of what I'd convinced myself I believed, I didn't, and I didn't need to, which meant that on Sunday mornings I could stay in bed or play football or go to the tip or do all the other things that you do on Sundays if you're not a religious believer. And that made a huge difference to my life at the time, because suddenly everything made sense. I felt honest with myself, I wasn't deceiving myself. So when I retired, I thought, well, it's made a difference to me, perhaps I could make a difference to other people by training to do the funeral celebrancy, which has been hugely demanding and very rewarding. And then more recently, I've become the first humanist chaplain to Leeds hospitals where I used to work. The beauty of a humanist, non-religious funeral is that it's bespoke, it's tailor-made. There's no pre-packaged liturgy, prayer book form of wording. We meet with the relatives, and very often with the person who's died before they die, to discuss their wishes, to make sure that both the deceased and the family get the sort of funeral they were wanting, which is very much a celebration of a life rather than mourning for something that's been lost, although clearly there's sadness in every funeral which you have to address and cope with. And so the format is very free, but there'll always be usually a tribute either by myself with information I've got from the surviving relatives and friends, or from the family, and the family may want to contribute music, whatever, poetry, readings. So it's very free form. But I think people come away from it at the end feeling that was a good way to remember George or whoever, and it's the sort of thing he would have wanted. And hopefully, usually at the end, it's a bit more upbeat than is sometimes the case with religious funerals. Although clearly, a good vicar will give you a good funeral, a good religious funeral, which has the same effect. But I think it's perhaps a bit easier if you're not hidebound by everything that's gone before and all the liturgy that's pre-imposed on you to some extent.
I don't fit neatly into any religious view. I would certainly class myself as a spiritual person. I believe that we are here to fulfill our life's purpose and find out what that might be as an individual. I believe we come from the creative source, and after we pass away, we go back and we get to report to him or her what that experience was like and what we have learned. I believe you get one shot while you're here. You really need to make the most of it. Live your life, your own life, and fulfill your life's purpose. And that is my belief, and that is my passion.
As a Christian, as somebody who has asked Jesus into the life, I'm a big believer that there is a God. Pam has gone to heaven. The sad part of that is I won't recognise her when I get there, because she has a completely different body. She has no more pain, no more suffering, and she's there with Jesus, praising and worshipping and having a good old party.
You've been an atheist since I've known you, and physics corrected my views, and I just don't feel that there is anything remotely like a heaven and hell after you die. We are, as you said before filming, we're meat. And when the heart stops beating and the brain dies,
That's it, you're dead.
you don't exist anymore. You're gone.
No, I don't believe in the afterlife. I certainly don't believe in the angels on clouds sort of afterlife where you meet all your old family members. Although I might have a nice surprise, who knows. But I'll have to wait, hopefully, some time before I find out. That's preferable to holding out what I believe to be false hope for something that I don't believe is going to happen. And it does mean that people cope with death right now. Before they die, they come to terms with what's going to happen. And the beauty of believing that nothing happens after death is that you make damn sure that you live your life to the full and do as much good and have as much fun as you can while you're alive, which I think is a very positive thing. People think atheism is a negative thing because you don't believe in something, but nobody wants to be defined by what they don't believe. It's what you do believe. And I believe that living a good life is important, and humanism helps me to do that without having any false hope for the future.